Morning, everybody. So happy that you're here for our coffee with the principal. I'm really excited to have John Sommer with us today. And John is the district safety officer. So he's going to be talking about our safety protocols across the district. He's also the athletic director at the high school, middle school, and does a lot of other things for us. So really glad to have you here, John.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's early in the morning to be hanging out in elementary school. As you said, I'm the director of safety and athletics for the district. My hope today is just kind of talk through, kind of give you a 10,000-foot view of what we do for school safety, talk through kind of some of the protocols that all of our students and staff are familiar with, and then give you the opportunity to ask some questions, and do my best to give you an answer at the end. We ready to go, Susie? We waiting on anything? Okay. So go ahead. Yeah,
Maybe we could just do some quick introductions.
sure.
I always like to start with that.
So John
Just-
Sommer, Director of Safety and Athletics for South Louis School District.
I'm Lauren and I have a third grader.
I'm Nikki and I have a fourth and a sixth grader.
I'm Kaua and I have a fifth grader. I'm Anna and I have a seventh and a third grader.
I'm Sierra and I have a second and a fifth grader.
I'm Ben and our son just started kindergarten.
I'm Susie, the elementary principal. Good morning.
And I'm Christy. I'm the Director of Communications and I'm 10th grader.
Christy does all of our, if you read the Navigator, she's the one that puts all that together for us and does so much for us. So thank you. Do you want to tell us who you are real quick?
Yes, I'm Chris.
Awesome.
Awesome.
No worries at all. Welcome, Chris. Good. Coffee first, for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody, for that. And John, back over
Yeah,
to
I
you.
recognize the faces of everyone who does have middle and high schoolers. You'll get to know me as your kids get older. So I kind of think of school safety. So my background, I spent 20 years as a Marine prior to getting into education. So I tend to think of a lot of my school safety, not in the framework of the military, but in how we kind of break things down. And so I like to think of school safety as having kind of three levels. We've got a strategic phase, we have an operational phase, and then we have a tactical phase. The strategic phase is what we're doing as kind of district leadership. So what policies do we have in place? And that includes school board policies. What kind of communication are we having with outside agencies? South Louis Fire and Rescue, Langley Police, Island County Sheriff's Office, kind of some of those outside agencies that would assist us in any kind of an emergency. And then at the operational level, that's kind of what building leaders are doing. What kind of training are we doing as a district or as a building? What kind of policies do we have in place at the building level? How are we training our kids to follow or to know what to do when one of the 5 protocols is enacted? And that's kind of operationally, and then tactically, like what are we doing in the classrooms, right? So what that looks like in kindergarten through 3rd grade is going to look very different than what that looks like in high school, just because of the cognitive ability of the kids. You know, we can talk about scarier topics with older kids, and we kind of have to make it more fun and less scary for little kids so they actually want to come back in the building. And so that's kind of how I think about it. So kind of overarching at the district level, we're taking a look at a lot of our policies and what's called this comprehensive school safety plan right now. Ours is due to be redone in the next year or two, and so we're reaching out to a lot of our partners within the district. So working with Chief Wasser and folks from Island County Sheriff's Office and along with South Louis Fire and Rescue to kind of figure out if we still have all the right structures in place. We've had some moves within the district. We're no longer using the buildings on the community centers, educational spaces. The South Campus is still kind of an educational space, but not quite what it used to be. And so when we talk about, you know, reunification plans, if there's a building is damaged during an earthquake or something like that, where are we gonna get your kids back to you? What that process is gonna be like? Are we gonna have to close down roads? Like, so there's a lot of coordination that has to happen when something like that goes on. So at my level, at the district level, we're kind of in the process of reviewing what that looks like and making sure that all of our board policies that are in place will support that. At the operational level, we're really at the beginning of the year, so we've got new kids, and then we've got kids that rightly did a brain dump of everything school-related last June, and we get them back into kind of the swing of things of what they're supposed to do. And then we just did our district training on these a couple weeks ago, and so now kind of at the tactical level, the teachers are going through with their students, and we haven't done any large school evacuation drills yet or anything like that. But talking about, so I don't know if have you guys ever seen our lock blocks that are on the doors? How those work, right? You've seen those little, so there's one over here. Lock right there. Do the kids know how to use that, right? Do they know where in the classroom they could hide? Do they know what's the proper place to go during an earthquake, and kind of having those conversations at the individual classroom level, so that when we kind of build that up, then the next level is to have a building wide drill. And so they have the skills and capabilities necessary to kind of operate at that building level. But that's kind of where we're at like right now in the school year. Before I get into kind of the protocols, are there any questions about kind of those three different layers of school? Yeah.
And one of the things I thought as we went through the protocols, I could talk a little bit about kind of our processes for our youngest kiddos in the building, our ITK to kind of first, second grade. Because of course, there's a difference how we communicate with children at this level versus middle school, high school.
And so the question of how do we determine that? I mean, we have wonderful teachers, and so I don't dictate to them like this is how you will present it. I can come up with ideas. I think one of the things we can do at the really little kid is turn things into a game, right? We're the scariest one, right? The lockdown drill, because there's something dangerous in the building. They could turn it into a game of like, hey, who can hide the best, so that nobody from that window could look in and see that you're in here. Versus at the high school level, we're going to talk about, hey, there's somebody in the building who has a gun, and they're looking to harm students and staff. So that is why we're hiding, and that cognitively they can kind of process that information. But that's not something that I don't believe is going to be presented to our younger kids that way. But we really leave that up to the kind of the building administrators and the teachers at that level to determine what is an appropriate way to discuss those topics with students. If you ask me, my life experience has not led me to probably real strong at having those conversations with little kids. So here's what they need to know. Now use your expertise of being a early childhood educator and come up with a way to get that information across. What other questions? One I always get is, why don't you let us know about drills ahead of time? And I'll give you a real world example. Last year, we announced our first fire drill down at the middle high school. Within 24 hours, we had 2 online threats that somebody was going to come and shoot up the kids as they were evacuating from their drill. It was a hoax. It was done on TikTok, which means that the sheriff's office was not able to get a warrant to figure out who made those posts, because it's a Chinese-owned company, and they don't comply with warrants. Or at the time it was. And so we no longer announce to the community when we're doing those drills. But we do give our teachers, some of our teachers, a head up that serve our students that may have some sensory issues with loud noises, a lot of movement, big changes in their schedule. We give them a little bit of a warning so that they can prepare them. But we've also found, and this is kind of what best practices show, those kids that might have real sensitivity to sounds, you got alarms going off and the intercom going off, it's a bad day for them, and that sucks. But it would be much worse if it was a real emergency and that was the first time that that ever happened and they didn't have any experience with what that is going to sound like and what that's going to look like. And then having those professionals that are in the rooms working with them, our paraeducators and our teachers, be able to work with them through those situations. Doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable for them. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a pleasant experience, but at least it's not the first time. So when they actually have to evacuate the building, they've been there, done that, and they've at least seen what it's supposed to look like. And it gives our teachers to evaluate, hey, we might assume that they're going to have an issue with this and they might be fine. Or another kid, hey, this kid thought maybe he was going to be fine with a lot of noises, but they're completely worked up and it's completely throwing them off their base. And so we give our teachers an opportunity to identify those kids that they're probably going to have to provide more assistance to, should we be in a real life emergency.
I've actually been here in a second grade, helping out volunteering whenever they had a lockdown drill. And I can tell you that probably the most frightened person in the room was me. Okay. The kids handled it beautifully, even the ones that had some sensory issues and things like that. They were all into it. For me, it's because news and all that stuff, it was really impactful to me. But the teacher had kind of talked to the kids a little bit, saying, hey, we're going to do this, and this is what we're going to do. All going to be really quiet. Second grade class, we're all going to be really quiet. That was a challenge, okay? But the kids didn't seem to get affected. Impressive what the teacher.
That's really kind of the educator's role in all this, is to be the one that knows to really keep themselves calm and keep everybody else as calm as possible. Be able to, like, when you're calm, you can make better decisions based on very limited information in a pretty chaotic situation. So these are kind of our 5 emergency protocols. And when we enact one of these, and I'll kind of go through the different scenarios where we might enact one of these 5. But what happens in the school is the school secretaries kind of have a button on their computer that they can push, and it sends out an automated announcement about which one of these it is.
And I'll just share that at this school, we have not been using that automated message. I get on the intercom and talk in a really, calm voice. And we may be moving so they at least hear it one time, but for the little ones, that
It's not a very welcoming voice. It's it sounds like me telling you that the building is on fire. But yeah, so differences either way, the kids are going to hear that we're either in a hold, a secure, a lockdown, and evacuate, or a shelter. Okay, so those are kind of the 5 protocols that we train them on. And then throughout the year, each building kind of keeps track. Every month we're required to do a safety drill. And we keep track and make sure we hit all 5 at some point during the year. But oftentimes, for example, shelter, right, is often going to be followed by an evacuate, right? We're going to shelter because we're in an earthquake. Earthquake is over. We don't know if the building's damaged, and now we're going to evacuate the building, right? So they're not always just a kind of a single entity, but lots of times some will transition from one to another, and that will be all done over the intercom. We'll start with hold. Okay, so kind of what the kids hear about hold is like, hey, everybody just stay in your room and we're going to clear the halls. Okay, this usually is not because there's anything dangerous happening. There might be a student in crisis, having a behavior crisis, a mental health crisis out in the halls. We want them to be able to maintain their dignity as much as possible, so that we don't need to, especially at the 612 campus, because we're constantly changing classes, right? So middle school changes every 60 minutes and the high school changes every 90. So there's constantly kids transitioning through the halls. Kid throws up in the hall, has a bathroom accident. We just don't need a whole bunch of people, for one, kind of seeing that kid in that situation. And 2, it gives our staff time to make sure that everything's cleaned up. Put a building into a secure, it is generally not for a school safety concern, or what you would think, more of just hey, we have something happening in the halls and we need to give staff time to figure out what's going on and mitigate whatever it is. Yeah, hold. Yep. Secure is a little different. So that's where we get inside and we lock the outside door. So secure means that there is a threat outside the school. So my duty station before I moved here was in Hawaii. My kids went to public school there, and about a half mile down the road was a detention facility. And so they were out at lunch one day, and two guys in orange jumpsuits came running across the playground. They didn't mess with any of the kids, but that's something that we would cause us to go into a secure. Now, if we lived up in Winthrop, and all of a sudden there's a bear or a mountain lion on campus, right? That's a danger that's outside the building. All we need to do is get everybody inside, lock the doors, and we should be safe. Right? With everybody that's inside the building doing secure, school's going to go on as normal, right? Teachers are going to teach, custodians are going to clean, right? Administrators are going to supervise. All those normal things that happen during a school are going to happen when we're insecure. Same thing with the hold, right? There should be really no interruption to the student's day, other than they know they can't go outside or they can't leave their classrooms during a hold. Secure, we can still change classes, we can still go about our day. Kids can still go to lunch. All those things can still happen during a secure. I'm going to bop down to shelter. Okay, shelter is kind of what you remember. I mean, I went to elementary school in the early '80s. Like, this was kind of the normal school safety drill that you did. Like, everybody get under your desk, because that's going to save you from a nuclear attack somehow. Right. So, but the big ones that we kind of talk about here with our kids are generally weather related. Okay. Tsunami, it's possible. I think the most likely scenario here is that we're going to be in an earthquake, right? We're just, or possibly a volcanic eruption. Something like that is what's most likely going to cause us to go into a shelter here at the school. So it's not, don't think shelter in place kind of gets thrown around a lot when we talk about like workplace violence and things like that, things on bigger college campuses, because there's some sort of danger. Shelter here has to do with, there is some sort of hazard that we need to do.
So what if the
Hmm?
lit off?
It would kind of depend. That would be a call that we make in conjunction with the fire department, right? So I think it would immediately be a secure. We want to make sure that we have all of our students in the building and get them accounted for, because the danger is outside the building. And then kind of make that evaluation. Whatever building it is, I'm going to be on site, and I'm going to be looking at how close is the fire to the building, right? Do we need to now change that from a secure, or from a secure to now we need to evacuate and we need to move everybody across the street or wherever it is away from the fire? Do we have time, right? As a fire department here, do we have time? Like, hey, there's too much smoke, so we actually need to initiate some sort of reunification. So we keep the kids in the school. We know we have everybody. Now we need to start working with Christy to make sure that we get messaging out to parents. Hey, we have a fire in the property adjacent to the school. The smoke is getting really bad. It's unhealthy for kids to be here. Please come pick up your children until healthy air to breathe.
So. Yes, it's not.
Right.
So.
In a community
Is
of
that part of this or?
it's kind of we would probably transition from these emergency actions, right, to more of a sustained plan, which is going to be done in concert probably with the Red Cross. But it comes from that immediacy, right? We're going to keep kids here until parents are able to get here, right? Maybe that's not in this building. Maybe that's in a different building. Maybe we have to get the buses and take the kids down to the community center and put them in the gym in the spaces down there because it's safe. Either way, we're going to move everybody from one location to another, and then we'll set up a kind of a Mako at that place where parents can come get their children. Because we're probably not going to want to do that in two locations. So that's actually one of the it's one of the things I'm working with. So the ESD is the Educational Service District. So each region within the state of Washington. So I think there's 189 schools, or we're in ESD 189. It's up in Anacortes, and it's kind of like a regional education office. They'd have curriculum resources, and I worked with their safety department up there. And so that's one of the things we're working on right now is other districts are kind of piloting programs to purchase a Starlink, purchase those so that in these kinds of emergencies, what is your emergency communications equipment have? Does somebody know how to use it? Will it link up to all of your spaces, or is it just going to give enough internet for your district staff to make sure we maintain communications? So that's something we're working on. To be quite honest, we don't, if we lose all of our landlines here, we're kind of at the whim of cell at this point on our personal devices. And if that goes down, currently the district doesn't have anything. Working with the ESD to determine what is kind of the best practices we're finding in that situation.
Would we do?
The messaging, high anxiety. I think the thing I would want parents to know is, right, none of us are going home, right, until every kid has gone home. So we have cafeteria folks, right? We have enough food to sustain us for probably 72 hours or longer with the entire. So whether it's in this building or we've gotten buses, we transfer them to another building, either way, like, we are going to stay with your children until you come and get them. Because any of us that have kids, right, they're here with us already. So it's not like I've got to run to go get my kids somewhere else. So we're going to stay, we're going to make sure, that's kind of one of our promises to the community, is that in an emergency like that, we're going to stay with your children until you can come to get them. That might be 36 hours. Oh, no, right, depending on what the, but I will tell you also that I think a lot of the services are going to come here. Usually in small communities, the schools become kind of that belly button of that's something we could look at probably at the K-5 level. I don't know that would be appropriate at that. I think right now what we would run into is, where would we keep it? Where would we put all that stuff? I think it's a great idea. I know one of the things, the teachers, most teachers keep extra stuff. Every teacher has a red bag in their classroom that has supplies, so it's not the fun stuff that's going to make them feel comfortable. Every teacher has a bucket in their classroom, the bathroom bucket. So we have the ability to kind of sustain ourselves within that classroom for some level of. Notice you had on the other side, you had your hand up earlier. Oh, we're gonna be right here with your kids. Yeah. Yeah, because at that point it becomes a community problem, because if the roads are that bad, then we're gonna have to set up traffic control to even get you guys in here to get your kids. Otherwise it becomes crazy, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not just kids run out and go find your parents, right? We've got processes in place, right? So that, all right, I got Kennedy here, right? On Kennedy's list, it's got Todd is the only person that can pick them up. Okay. But also there's some other family members listed here, right? Or Kennedy's also a 10th grader. So somebody that's not Todd that comes to pick her up, and she can be like, that is my grandma, right? Or that is my uncle, right? But at the younger levels, right, there's some different things where we're not going to just turn kids over to people that we don't know for sure. So that might also be something that takes a longer process, right? If guardians of record are injured, we're not just going to release kids to adult that says that they are. Yeah. No one's going to grab them. Susie and I are just going to be here for a long time.
We're in
Yeah.
somewhat of a great community because everybody comes in and helps everybody. But we're also an extremely fragile community.
Yes.
Because there's, up at that end of the island, there's any one of 3 or 4 bridges that could fall down during an earthquake.
Yep.
And cut off access from the north. And there's 2 docks down here, cut us off from the south. And if we lose that, then one of us, a single dad, I could be on the mainland, and all of a sudden. I don't know.
We would basically, this would become a shelter, right? We would have to establish a shelter and we would. Yes.
So you talked about using Starlink for the schools. And I think this happened before, if my memory might be wrong, but a tree fell in the front of a bus and then it kind of trapped the bus because trees, it was a storm. It could have been, it was years ago, but basically the bus got stuck on one of our roads that doesn't have like cell service. And so if there is an emergency, are we considering adding ways, because it could happen at the end of school or at the beginning of school where the
The
kids
buses
are on
are taken care of now. So we have went to all new digital systems that have digital. In fact, I got the email 2 days ago that they need to get the buses in to remove all the old analog stuff. And I was on, I coach middle school football and I was on a bus day in Monroe, stopping at McDonald's on the way home and I could hear, no, it was on the way there. And I could hear the bus drivers here on the island talking back to dispatch and we were. So there were definitely some problems because those analog repeaters, you just can't get them high enough here in order to hit every place on the island. But the new digital repeaters that we have, there is no place that our buses go where they lose communications with dispatch. So something like that where we have the ability to communicate. I've been working with our director of technology and some of the new radios that we've been using for a lot of our paraeducators and special ed teachers to make sure that they have communication between them. Those are also digital and they have quite a long range. I can easily, you get on my radio and call up here and talk to CZ from my bill. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Kind of piggybacking on that for multiple reasons. I'm early pickup at the school. So on Mondays, I'll be here an hour early. On the rest of the week, I'm at the middle school, an hour early, sitting in front of the school, waiting for my kids. I don't mind not having internet service. I don't have cell service. If I see a shooter walking up to the school, I have no way to call Deanne. I have no way to call the front desk. And I could go purchase a bulletproof vest and tackle them myself. I'm not that much of a person to do that, but I'm willing to. Is that something we're trying to
Cell service.
look into? Like, that's a big blind spot. Personally, I could stop somebody within a few minutes of something terrible happening. Is there not a booster situation that we could put out toward the front of the school?
Not for cell service, for the Wi-Fi. You can get
Okay.
the Wi-Fi right out there and you can make calls that way. I changed my cell service to T-Mobile because I get 4 bars down at the school. Right, so I get cell service anywhere on campus. Well, if I'm out at the softball field, it's not as great as I am up at the school. Yes.
I have a kindergartner, and if my question was, I don't know what happens, and I really hope it never happens where I'm not at the bus to pick him up. And I'm just curious as to what happens. Does he so say something happens to me where I can't make it to the bus on time, or I'm just a few minutes late. My kid continues on the bus. Like, how do I get in touch? Do I call the school? Thank you.
Up for you. This has happened before. People have missed ferries because we don't let kindergartners off the bus unless there's an adult there waiting for them. So the bus driver lets base know, base lets us know. We continue to call emergency contacts. The child stays on the bus and they come right back here to us and hang out until.
The challenge with that is if your bus. And you hear nothing.
Not losing a kid is one of our priorities. At South Whitby School District. I could say that emphatically. Yes.
So maybe you can talk me through this because the other day, like lost track of my seventh grader. We just miscommunicated on, is he taking the bus or not? But what is the best next steps if like, cause I usually pick him up here. If he doesn't show up, like, do I contact the middle school? Like what
Yeah, so,
should be the best way to go about
Like
that?
the middle school, the office staff, they're, I think generally on contract till about 3:30 every day. And so if it's before 3:30, you can usually call, and usually, if a kid is really lost, we've heard from them. They come in and they're like, my mom was supposed to pick me up, and, but they're not here, or, hey, I missed the bus. Some kids will just walk up here. Kind of depends on your kid, but yeah, just calling the office or just coming back down. And just checking in, because there's several times I've had to get on, look at our camera system and be like, oh no, they actually got on a different bus with their buddy and didn't let you know. There is no pickup patrol. Is that what it's called? Pickup patrol? Pickup patrol for 6 through 12. Right. So 6, 7, 8, the bus driver's supposed to get a note if they're not regularly riding that bus, supposed to have a note. 9 through 12. But I can usually track kids with the cameras. There may be, out of 180-day school day year, there's maybe 20 days when I'm not there. All right, we kind of covered shelter. We'll go into evacuate. That's pretty obvious, right? That we need to get out of the building. Fire drill. The building's been damaged. Something in chemistry went horribly wrong. There's a spill of chemicals, right, from that we didn't know that were there. Something like that is going to cause it. Whatever we need to do, we need to evacuate the building. This has been an interesting year for that, just because with all the construction going on. We kind of had the 612. We've had the altar where we're going to muster. Here at Susie's building, the teachers just kind of had to come up with some creative ways to navigate some of the construction that's going on back on that southwest side. But this is us getting out of the building. Or it's not safe to be in. Right, and then the one that scares everybody, the lockdown drill. Right, so we can call it out for what it is. Right, this is generally for a school shooting drill. Like that's what this has become. Right, there is danger inside of our building. So what we really focus on, right, with the kids is locks, lights, out of sight. What that means is that every classroom door is locked. That's why we have those lock blocks, so that a teacher never has to be in a situation where they have to try and lock a door when they're super scared. And if you're, it's called like tachypsychia, right? Basically, where you lose fine motor control movements when your stress levels are really elevated. And so instead of training that like you would in the military to do something fine skilled over and over again, like we're not going to get our teachers out there and make them scared and learn how to like lock a door. So we just have the lock blocks. So in emergency, they flip that. Every kid knows how to do it. I know we identified in this building that some of our lock blocks were a little high in some of our younger classrooms. And so our maintenance is going through and moving them down so a kid could do it. And then we turn out the lights. Okay. For one, it'll be interesting. If you want to see it in action, you can come down to middle school lunch and I'll start lunch with the lights on. And then halfway through, I'll turn the lights off and you'll just see automatically just the noise. Brings the kids down, right, to normal level. So part of it is just kind of keeping everybody calm. And part of it is we want to limit visibility into that room. Okay, so all of this is based off of best practices. This is the group that actually puts this together is called I Love You Guys. And you can Google that. They have a lot of free resources you can kind of see. So they're involved with like the FBI Center for School Violence, and a whole bunch of other national organizations. And so after every incident, right, there's these after action reports come out and the whole bunch of smart people compile that information and basically look for trends and what are going to be best practices for school. And so things shift over time as far as what's best practices. And so we're trying to turn out the lights because we want to limit the visibility into the room, right? Because the idea is that unless somebody is coming into the building to commit violence against a particular person, right, student or staff member, they're just looking for people to hurt. And in that case, they're going to look for easy targets. They're going to look for targets of opportunity. Right? So yes.
Protocol for the library, since it's so visual. Whoever's walking through the building.
Yeah, so there's offices in the library that they can usher the kids into. Getting flat on the ground in between the bookshelves. I know they're low for the little kids, but they can still get flat on the ground, right? And that's something that they should be training with their library teacher when they're in there. But also, even if they are just randomly in the library and they haven't done that training, they know locks, lights, out of sight, and so that should be in their brain that like I need to get low and I need to get out of sight. And so that's kind of why we really hit that kind of like stop, drop, and roll of the 80s, right?
Yep. And one of the things I wanted to share is that we intentionally schedule the drills at different times of the day so they have practice with them when they're with specialists or, at, at lunchtime or recess. So they're seeing that in a variety of settings. I have a document I'm going to share with you that we're training our teachers with, and we could talk about would this be something we'd want to share with families? So we're kind of using the same language. I think Christy's going to pull that up real quick. We only developed this for ITK, which is our pre-K through first grade, because developmentally the older kids have had now 3 years of practice, and we feel pretty confident in their, ability to understand and feel comfortable. Not that one. That's the drills. Just so you know, we have this document that after we do a drill, we have what's called a sweep team who go through and make sure the doors are locked and everything that's supposed to happen. Then we report back on that, and then we connect with John after the drill to say, this worked, or room 203 needs a new something. So we always debrief after the drills. Do you see that one?
I think especially for the littles, what I would recommend is, and I know Susie does this, after a big drill, there's communication that comes out after we do it to let families know that we did conduct a drill. And then that would be probably a good time to reach out to that individual teacher, and you can say, how was this discussed?
Yeah, so on this protocol, this is, again, that we shared with teachers and are going through training with them. If you want to just scroll down, you can see that kind of talks about the way we soften the language a bit for the youngest learners. If you keep going down, like on secure, as an example, the key message for the kids, we go inside and we stay safe. So kind of softening, and then that morning of the drill, not too soon before, but before. So the first thing they're not hearing about it is on the intercom with our youngest
Yeah,
learners.
I do want to be very clear with that. We don't,
Yeah.
like that's kind of why Susie can come on, is just on the thing, and it's much softer, right? So for the little kids, maybe they've got a 5-minute warning. What we don't do is let the community know, right? And we don't let give the kids enough warning where they can get online and do something.
Something I would feel, if you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
John, kind of sharing something like this with families, so you could at least see the kind of language that we're using with our littles.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have like a goal of how many you have to do or you want to do? Like, is it like is
One every
it
month. Yep.
one every month? Okay.
And if we identify something that we need to talk about. So if we
Right.
do an evacuation drill and it goes horribly wrong, right? My response isn't going to be, well, we got another one in 6 months. We'll try it again then, right? We're going to hit it again in a couple weeks, right? We're going to identify, right? What were the gaps? What went wrong? What didn't we like about it, right? Are that because it's almost always going to be because there's a gap in training, right? Either training of staff or training of the students. How do we assess how big that gap is? Once I assess how big that gap is, we're going to come up with something that we implement in order to make sure that we identify, or that we fill those gaps, and then we're going to do it again.
We have a couple different drills we do here at the elementary school too. Well, we have the bus drills, and that's going to be happening soon, where every child learns how to go out the emergency exits on the bus. Um, it's very sweet, actually, how they help each other. The older kids are helping the younger ones off the bus. And then the other thing that we do here at the elementary school is called the blue card drill. And every classroom has a laminated blue card, and we train the children. They love it. They get to take the blue card, 2 kids at a time. If the teacher passed out or if something happened in the classroom and the adult wasn't able to help, 2 kids are trained to run to the office and yell emergency, emergency with the blue card. And so we practice that as well.
Yes. That's what I was
16th.
going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our next one. So we will be practicing. So on the far edge of the playground, the lower field, there's a fence and there's the names of each teacher, signs, laminated signs. And so they'll be practicing before that drill on the 16th, just walking out with the class, showing them where they line up. And we've got a really specific protocol. Every teacher has the red backpack. In that are their class lists. We have red and green cards. I'm out with my radios. Um, we go out as soon as the teacher has taken roll and affirms that every child is there. The green card is held and we mark them off. If there's a red card, we immediately figure out sometimes with if children are in a reading pullout group, we have to do some coordination. So we affirm where that child is. I'm so amazed. I think you are one of them. Our kids do such a great job. It's like really incredible. We can do those in like 6 minutes or something to get them out, lined up. Everybody's got a green card in the air. And then we do a similar protocol. So down at South Campus, they hear our announcements. And so that if they're at garden or PE or any of those, similar, but they line up down below on the South Campus. Do you want to talk about that at all, Christy?
Same thing. Set the guard, close to the guard.
Believe it or not, safety drills with elementary kids are actually easier than they are with the bigger kids. Bigger kids know it's not fun anymore to like march with your classmates and line up, and now you're just cold because you didn't wear enough clothes to school, and it's 40 degrees out and you're shivering for 30 minutes outside.
So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound. And I can't imagine what you guys have to deal with having construction workers on, having to have building access open. This two-part question, how do you vet that so that you know coming from all over the place aren't all of a sudden PO'd at their boss, like, postal, so that level of confidence that we're not going to have a wild situation.
I think
The other part of the question
yeah.
that relates is, I was at this school, middle school or high school a week ago at about lunchtime, and the front door by Miss Petty was propped open wide, and anybody could walk in. And I actually commented, I said, "Why is the door open?" Well, so many people are going in and out, and we don't want to. But boy, that seemed to be. That wasn't as major as the construction hole, right, to come in.
So sure, on the construction side, it's part of our contract with Absher, our construction company. They have to run the same background check that we would do on any adult that we would want to come in and volunteer or coach or teach in our school. As far as mental health evaluations for somebody like you talk about shooting up a post office, there's no checks and balances that exist for that. As far as anybody who has a known history of hurting children, all of those construction workers that are on site have passed that same background screening that we do for our staff. That's written into our contract. As far as the lunch door, principal opens that every day for high school lunch because we allow kids to transition to and from. And then you may not have seen it, but either he or I is always positioned to be able to watch that. I'm watching it, and he's usually inside watching. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to say about the lockdown drill is kind of the out of sight. So what we train kids is we got to find a place in the classroom, right, where everybody's going to kind of huddle so that somebody can't see in. Okay, we used to have, and we still have them up there, right? And the teachers are allowed to use them if they want to. It is best practice not to, but they have the kind of the curtains that you can drop down. And it basically, it had been kind of being thrown around for a while. And then after Uvalde down in Texas, law enforcement came back and said, it's actually better if you can see in the room. Okay. Maybe if it's a huge window and there's no place to hide, maybe they drop it. But with a small window like that, what I was talking about with people looking for targets of opportunity, because they're not really there to hurt somebody specific, they're just there to hurt people. If we're out of sight, they're not that's not the easy target. But what that does allow is for law enforcement when they're going through and clearing the building, because what our kids know is there's never going to be, when we go into a lockdown, there's never going to, unless it's a drill, there's never going to be a time where myself or Miss Richards or anybody else gets on the intercom and says, hey, everything's good, it's over. We go into a real lockdown. The only way those kids come out of that classroom is either they get themselves out because they've gone out a window and they ran into the woods. Great, go save yourself. Or law enforcement or a school administrator who has a physical key goes through, unlocks that room and lets you out. So they stay in there until somebody lets them out. And that's the only way that they come out. And so it's a lot easier for law enforcement to kind of clear through the building and find the actual target that they're looking for if they can kind of look into a room and say, likely not in there, and they can continue to move on. So we keep those up so that law enforcement can see in. Push thing. To the middle high school we do. So I'm working that with Chief Wasser this year. I don't know that that would be a great thing to do down here at this building, just with our little kids. But we do it with the older kids.
And we've actually had evening drills where police and fire come and do mock drills when there's no children in the building. So they're familiar with the layout and the rooms. All our room numbers, or all our rooms, if you notice, have cards with a numbering system that's actually different than our classroom, but that's what law enforcement and emergency providers.
Yeah, so right there, 308.
Yep. Every room has that, and that's what our emergency services folks use.
Or even no, not for, even if we've got like an injured kid, right? We've got an earthquake and they can't get out, and it's like, hey, we're starting to do triage. I can get on the phone somehow with that teacher or talking to him through the door. It's like, hey, I got 3 really injured kids in here, but we need to extricate them from the outside. Then I can at least tell the fire department, hey, you need to go to room 308. That's where you need to start. Yeah, what's that? Oh, okay. It's like, yeah, this is not the fun coffee with the principal. That's kind of lockdown. I will tell you, like, that we talked about this, like, I get the question from teachers and kids all the time. Well, what if I'm outside and we go into a lockdown? How am I going to get back in the building? It's like, you're not. You're going to run and you're going to keep running until you can't run anymore. And then you're going to run a little bit farther and you're going to wait there. And then you're going to make your way back at some point, right? I would much rather have a kid or a group of kids with a teacher hiding in the woods for 3 hours than in a building where somebody is trying to. I give it to everybody. I give it to all staff, right? I don't do safety training for our entire student body. That's on the teachers to do in their individual classrooms, right? So here at the elementary, where there's not as much movement, you kind of stay, other than going to specialists, you kind of stay with the same room every day. But at the 6 through 12, when those kids have, middle schoolers have 6 different teachers a day, high schoolers have between 4 and 5. And so that in each room is designed differently, and each room is going to have a different safe place to hide. It's going to have a different evac route out of the building. Those evac routes have changed now because the high school is under construction, right? And we're changing our muster areas. So that's the responsibility of every individual teacher to have that conversation with each one of their classes.
And one of the things I was just going to share real quick that has really changed is it used to be that there was this very specific protocol that you always had to follow. And when John just did the training with us, it was like sometimes you have to use your own best judgment in situations. And that's been a challenge for teachers to kind of switch their thinking that I'm going to have to decide in certain situations. But
Yeah, we want to know
That's
what's the
best
end state.
practice.
Yeah, what's the end state we want?
Yep.
At the end of the day, we want kids to be safe. And keep as many kids safe as possible. I can't give you a script that's that's gonna make that happen in every situation. So you know that the idea is keeping kids safe. Here's kind of some basics. Go forth. Yes.
Is that the plan for the gym classes on the field? Is to just
Yep.
run into the woods?
Yep. Get away. Where it gets more interesting is if it's secure, right? If there's a threat outside, right? That's when we've got to work with those teachers about how do we get those kids in the building fast? Or does it make sense for them to be in, right? So if there's, somebody outside that's just acting crazy, or if there's a mountain lion, right? Like what do we do in that situation? It's like, well, you need to get yourself in the building as quick as possible. Walk fit is a little different. They walk the trails every day, but yes.
So are the teachers trained, or is there some protocol for the kids who have, say, physical limitations or disabilities to make sure that they're learning how to do these drills within their capabilities?
Yes. Yep. And that's on our, we've got a couple kids in wheelchairs, right? So that's part of our training, and we always, we have historically trained a couple kids too about how do we what's the proper way to pick these kids up out of their chairs, and bring them down the stairs. So that's part of most of those kids, at least the ones we have, doesn't matter, but yeah. Yes, the answer is yeah. We identify, that's part of my job in working with the building administrators, is identifying which kids have those physical limitations and then making sure we have a plan in place for those individual kids. Not necessarily a general plan, which we still have, like we got kids on crutches and, kids with broken legs. Like they're not going to use the elevator that they're normally allowed to use. There is an elevator in the building down there. But specifically the kids with known physical disabilities, we always have a plan to deal with those folks. Just continuously talking about it.
And to be honest with you, we have some lollipops in our red bags, our emergency bags. Don't share that all the time, but if we've got a child who just really can't,
If I'm the teacher, I'm going to put my hand over their mouth and keep them quiet. I will manhandle your child to save all the rest of them. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Those are kind of some of the hard conversations we have to have as a staff. And that's the hard conversations we've started having is you might have to make some choices. Like, no, you're going to have to choose between two bad outcomes. Yeah. Kennedy.
For like a lockdown, there are students who like eat out in the courtyard during lunch. Where would they supposed to go if it were to get locked down without them knowing?
Nearest classroom. Well, they would know because it's going to come over the intercom
Sometimes
system.
it's really loud out there and it is hard to hear the intercom.
Yeah, well, you're going to see everybody running to get inside.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the nearest classroom, right? So that's why we talk about that. And it's just for everybody. Kennedy's very familiar with what that looks like because they've done some drills. But we talk about what happens if we're during passing period, right? So teachers, basically, you open your door, you let as many kids in as possible, and then you shut that door. And then you start taking attendance, right? You start saying, okay, well, I don't have the kids that I'm supposed to have because I'm not supposed to have any kids right now because we're in our 5-minute passing period or we're lunch. And so they just start writing down names. There's an email, like a general email. I'm not going to say what it's called, but there's an email that teachers can go. That's basically an emergency email for emergency attendance. And they would just send that. And then I get it. Ms. Petty, our attendance secretary at our building, gets it. I'm sure that same thing happens down here. Christy gets it, right? So we can see, we start tracking that, and we can just basically go off the off roster of the school. This kid, this kid, this kid, and we start counting up, and making sure we have all those kids. So it would just be the nearest space that you can get into. Yes.
Since we're on the topic of training, in the wake of some of these tragedies, there have been school districts around the country who have talked about firearm training for teachers or encouraging them to carry firearms or having safety officers in schools with who are armed. What's the district's stance and discussion on those kind of things?
We are not entertaining training or equipping or arming our teachers. I can tell you that emphatically. I think the discussion of school resource officers is an ongoing discussion within all communities. And if that's something that you feel strongly about, like that's something I would encourage you to discuss with our school board and our superintendent. Because I know that's constantly something that comes up. And I'm sure they'd be love to hear community feedback on that. Yes.
About other like things you can use to protect yourself, like mace or that for the teachers?
No, those things aren't on our campus. No, I think that probably the likelihood of a situation where a teacher would need to employ that versus the likelihood of it getting found or left unsecured and being used by a student is probably the juice isn't worth the squeeze there. But there's also the issues of that's not something we can mandate, and I think it would probably also be a violation of Washington state law. I don't know, but I'm not aware of any laws that allow you to supersede and allow non SROs to carry weapons on school grounds. Yeah. It's something we've talked about. I think that's something that really would have to be handled at the school board level if that's a policy change that we would want to make, because then you also have to have the funding to maintain it. You have to have the training to get school security personnel that you have to hire in order to man it. That's not something that teachers are able to do. That would never fly as part of a collective bargaining agreement for teachers for them to be responsible for security in that way. So I think if things changed and we saw a lot more violence in our schools, that might be something that we would look at. But then it's not just the metal detector. Then it's every time that the thing goes off, you got to search through every kid's stuff to figure out why it's going off. So now we're talking about searching 700 kids a day every time they come in the building. So I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. I'm just saying it's not feasible with the current structure that we have in place, and it would require work at the school board level to change policy for that, something like that to happen. But what I can tell you what we did last year when there was a threat to our campus is administrators just sat at the doors with a big table, and we searched every kid that came in.
Well, you're also.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All buildings.
Yep. We're increasing our physical security barriers, right? Like that, and that's honestly the locks, lights, out of sight. Thank you for bringing that up. The lock blocks, all of those things are time delays, right? Given an infinite amount of time, right? School buildings are not prisons. They're not nuclear facilities, right? Given an infinite amount of time, somebody could get into any space that they wanted within a school. So what we're trying to do is provide enough of a time barrier in order to allow law enforcement to get here and do what they need to do. That's why we lock the doors. That's why we stay out of sight, right? That's why we're all doing all of those things to create enough time for law enforcement to hopefully get here.
So, do you have any sort of preventative things about students bringing things like knives to school? Because I've had at least one student in one bring a knife to school. And
It's a
brag about
violation
having
of the student
multiple of
handbook,
them
and
with
so
him.
if you report it, then
It was taken away, but he was bragging about having more with.
you got to report it. If we don't hear it and we don't know about it. So I've taken quite a few personal items from students over the last few years. I have a large drawer full of things I can dump or burn, whatever is appropriate.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Less than 5 minutes. So technically the schools are not in Langley proper, right? So for any kind of non-emergency needs, we call the Allen County Sheriff's Office because we're in their jurisdiction. I will tell you, Chief Wasser and I have talked many times, when that emergency call goes out over ICOM, it's going to be, Langley Police is going to be there first, probably because they're going to be closest. They're going to be that's, you could think as far as Langley to there, that's where our first officers we're going to.
He's amazing. I mean, when we've had to call an ambulance or they're here so fast.
He's wonderful.
Yes, he is. We're lucky to have him. Yeah.
It's minutes.
Good. You had a question?
I'm just wondering if there's any like emotional component with all these drills, not, I don't know, I'm projecting my own, like imagining the kids having a hard time with it all, but has there been any student-led drive to like want to have a club or a support network of any kind? Like I would imagine the older campus, I don't know, just wondering how that has played out and if there's space for that.
I think just managing stress and anxiety in general is part of our social at all levels, K-12. Nothing specifically to address school violence or very part of school violence. There's no clubs that I'm aware of that specifically address that. But I would say that the result of all of that, right, of thinking about that is going to be increased stress and anxiety. That on kind of the general level of how do we address outside of school violence, just a lot more anxiety out of our
The
kids.
mental health club too at the
There
high
is,
school.
yeah. But it doesn't specifically address school violence, but it addresses mental health issues in general.
And we know, I'll go right to you, Todd. I just want to, we also know who the kids are in our building who have that real high anxiety. And we've got some adults in the building who are not assigned to a specific class or kiddo. And we know who those kids are and they go to those classrooms before a drill. So they're there for those kids that need it. We have headphones too for some kids that have sensory issues. And we know when there's a drill, we're going to provide them with that support.
This kind of piggybacks off about three different things. Last year, you can attest to this, we were driving, and since I'm an older guy, 68, the conversation with the kids, what happens if I slump over at the wheel? What are they supposed to do? And to my surprise, and Susie probably, Laura, who is at that point, she was my 8-year-old, just started to kind of like get really nervous. And her statement was, I don't want to go to the policeman because, and that set off a number of things where I ended up going to talk to the kids and got them to calm down. So is there something, I know you have fire coming here, you just had them come in last week, I think. Is there something to get looked at as non-violence? Because there are some people, I gotta be careful what I say, that vilify the police. And they talk about bad police, and you go on YouTube and you see all this crap about, police bad. Where we can educate the kids that the police are there to help. And that's 99.9999% of the time that's the case. I mean, Allie's oversensitive. I'm not going to go to the police.
Both Island County Sheriff and Langley Police, we've had conversations. They're both well aware of kind of the dichotomy of views in our community and around the country of police. And so I think you've seen a lot of them, specifically Chief Wasser and some of the leadership on the south end for Allen County Sheriffs have started coming into the buildings a lot more, at least the building down there, and just being around, just
Yeah.
talking to kids.
Javier, his daughter used to be in our building, so he was here a lot. I really miss, I miss that.
No,
I
she's
need to
now a
just
middle
call
schooler.
him and
Yeah.
invite him for lunch or something. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Todd, to increase that comfort level for our children. And with
I've talked about that
officers.
with
Yeah.
both agencies, and that is something that they're working on. It's just coming in more when I don't call them.
Yeah, but their time is tough too. Right on. That's awesome, Todd. That's great. Great idea. Well, we're at time, so I want to just, if we could pop back to that real quick, I'll send this out. These are upcoming topics. Again, if you have topics that you'd like to cover, we got some great ideas at the last one. We've got calls out to some of our local pediatricians and different people. I'm hoping they can come join us as well, but let us know if you have topics. And then you had something that you wanted to share on your screen. And I just want to say a big thank you to you, John. That was excellent. Thank you so much.
I was just going to remind everyone that, one of the biggest things, especially with safety, is communication. And like we can do so much more if you report an incident or something, if there's something of concern, that way we know and can get on top of it before something happens. But also in the same boat, making sure that your information's updated and current with your registrar and that you register with ParentSquare, because that is the way we will be communicating everything that's going on. So if you want to receive it as text messages and not as emails, you need to do that through your ParentSquare. Choose that as your method of notifications. Otherwise, it's automatically, the default is by email. And so if you want it to be by text, you need to change that. Alerts though, and robocalls, those will all go right to every. Can be anonymous, or you can put your name in it. Much information as you want, but these are just different comes through. It's just for how we're handling it when it comes through. It's kind of the same way that it comes through, but this is on the website. It's really right at the top, right here, reporting. So you should see it pretty simply, but it gets you to this page, and then you can call, you can text, you can email, you can go through the website to do it. We have post classroom, but they barcodes on there for the kids. If they see something or know something, they can quickly get to it. But if we can know things, we get a lot of false. But I mean, it's helpful if we know something that's is going on. If someone's, even if it's someone who's having trouble that you think is having trouble, that